am bad at this. You'd think at this point, since I've been doing this for almost a year, I wouldn't make these kinds of mistakes, but you know, you get what you deserve for not paying attention fully. For those who don't know, I uploaded a video that just had factually incorrect information in it, and I did not catch it. It was about the Genestealer cult, and I didn't think anything was wrong with it until I went live with it, and boom! People were telling me I got something wrong. Here we are. Normally, I kind of let that stuff slide as long as it's kind of minor and then address it later in a big video, because I like to kind of hold myself accountable for my mistakes. But I want to uphold a better standard of video on my channel going forward, so I shall do my part. I just remove the old video and make a new one that is better, which is this video. I promise this one is going to be good, and I'll explain what I got wrong as I go and why I got it wrong. But the short end was, it was a simple mistake. Okay? Cool. For those who don't know me, I guess, hi, I'm Arthur. And on this channel, we really like Space Marines and the Leagues of Votann. Everything else is more or less forfeit in terms of accuracy. But as my channel grows, I need to be better at catching errors. So, a lot of people are often racking their brains in the community, what is the biggest threat to the Imperium of Mankind and the greater universe as a whole. It is a bit of a toss-up. I mean, the Necron usually just want to be left alone and possibly want to retake the galaxy at some point, but not really recently. Chaos just wants to send a bunch of possessed ketamine zombies at people and see who ends up getting the most followers out of it, like some kind of satanic Instagram model. But Tyranids seem to be a bit of a hot-button topic in terms of the most recent additions. Tyranids, on their own, are incredibly dangerous, but the fact of the matter is that they actually have one of the more dangerous weapons of all of the entire setting. The ability to see corruption like chaos cults, but a little bit more insidious. They actually have an intelligently designed endpoint for them. These are the Genestealer cults. You may ask, if you're unfamiliar, what is a Genestealer? To put it simply, it is the most efficient form of Tyranid. It is fast, it is hardy, it is deadly by nature, and it has enough of its own predatory intelligence that if it was not in the presence of the hive mind, it would not swiftly develop a case of poo brain. They are one of the most insidious, efficient, and lethal predators the Tyranids can produce. But the biggest danger they have is kind of alluded to in their name. They have an organ that is often referred to as an ovipositor, which I will say, as someone who was invested in the sciences for a few years, that name doesn't really make sense. The ovipositors exist in our world. They are an appendage that is often a barb that is used to lay eggs inside of creatures. There are species of wasps and insects that use it as their main means of reproduction. But names and nitpicking aside, what is it used for? Simply put, a Genestealer can be hidden on a planet, usually in the dark, damp caves where very little people exist. I usually headcanon it as some kind of mine, because if you look at the model range, you see a lot of mining equipment and mining stuff like lasers, pickaxes, sledgehammers, so on and so forth. But regardless, a Genestealer will abduct someone and inject them with a bit of genetic material from their ovipositor. This genetic material, though only microscopic in nature, is responsible for the downfall of many worlds. After this, the person who was injected will wake up having passed out and see the Genestealer that injected them as an emissary of some sort, as the Genestealer will begin to communicate with them psychically to lure in other miners. See, from their perspective, this Genestealer is quite literally a saint, an angel, a divine representative of their faith. With each new person that is brought in, more and more people are injected and their brains are rewired to think the Genestealer is literally this angel. So these people who are injected with the genetic material do not manifest too many symptoms. Now, when I say not too many symptoms, I mean it's not 100% immediately noticeable if you don't look at them closely. They look pale, they usually lose the majority of their hair, and sometimes they develop glowing yellow eyes, but on your typical hive planet, that's kind of overlooked, you know what I mean? Another detail is that they have the sudden strong urge to find a mate, and mate they usually do. I like Major Kill's fan theory that they exude a shitload of pheromones when they're injected with the Genestealer goop that make them unnaturally attractive to the opposite sex. So here's where the weird shit happens. I assume the gestation period of what comes out of this mating session is not standard, because the child that comes out is considered a hybrid. The first generation of these hybrids are barely human looking. They resemble more or less a fucked up Genestealer than they do a person of any kind. Usually, just a Genestealer with 3 arms, maybe a tentacle, and some human-y bits on there, and in some weirder cases having even weirder mutations. These offspring will find more of themselves and breed to make even more offspring, which, with each passing generation like this, it creates a hybrid that has less and less noticeable mutations. And once you hit the 4th generation of Genestealer hybrid, you find yourself looking at someone who looks almost identically to a human. No hair, of course, but they very closely resemble a human being, but with a few alien-y bits. Now, here's the rug pull. These entities will give birth to 100% pure Genestealers. So here is where shit gets rough. The whole "this bug is actually an angel sent from God" thing? Yeah, that gets worse with time. And the rest of this newfound familial cult are very obsessed with sort of a doomsday prophecy that has led them to believe the non-Genestealery people are heretics, liars, and sinners that will get eaten by the star gods that are coming soon. What the star gods are is dependent on each planet that the Genestealers infest, because it could be that they simply believe the Emperor is going to show up and the Emperor looks like a giant evil bug ship, or it could just be they believe the Emperor isn't a god after all and they believe in some weird ancient bug is the source of all human enlightenment. You think the Emperor is not actually a man, but instead a 4-armed purple dude like their original angel? Oh, and by the way, the original Genestealer that infected the first person has grown in size to become one of the more genuinely dangerous entities in the setting. A patriarch. While these generations of mutants are developing, you find yourself in a situation where they are planning to erode away the infrastructure of their oppressors in anticipation of the arrival of what they believe is their weird space insect Jesus god. Now, if you couldn't piece it together, their god is actually a hive fleet of Tyranids coming to devour the entire planet. These individuals, once they hit the 4th generation, are incredibly dangerous, as they implant these sleeper agents in every rung of Imperial society and make things pretty easy when they need to assassinate every single leader in the government hierarchy. Because remember, the 4th generation looks 99.99% human, except for maybe a lump or a bump on their forehead and the fact that they're bald. Put a wig, some makeup, and you're good. A cult uprising is usually kinda underplayed in the 40k setting to a lot of the fans as just a localized threat rather than a galactic one. But some of the worst events in the setting in recent times were because of the Genestealer cults. Like, the fall of the original size of the Emperor is because of a Genestealer cult. I mean, inevitably they dealt with it and got revenge by nuking the ever-loving fuck out of the Patriarch, but I guess joke's on them. The mountain they were in was gonna get translocated to a black hole or some shit anyhow. Belisarius Call shenanigans aside, I want to make it plain as day what my mistake was in the last video. In my previous video, I had gotten the order mixed up in my head, and I'm not gonna hide it. I thought the 1st generation of hybrids came out the least mutated and got worse with each successive generation that came afterwards. Turns out, it's the opposite, because you start with a human and end with a Genestealer. That's why I thought they got more Genestealery as things went by, because that makes more sense in my head. I don't even know how this works, to be honest. I was using cellular mutation rules where with each mutation, another mutation is more likely to happen if you don't kill the cell, but what the fuck do I know? I was only in university for almost half a decade studying anatomical sciences. I mean, I dropped out, but it counts. Alongside me getting the order wrong, I had such a cute little story prepared and narrated it for the video, but I guess it was all for naught. But I digress. The Genestealer cults are some of the most dangerous threats in the universe, even having an uncomfortably recent discovery that there was a cult on Holy Terra, which is upsetting. And having forces that could spread throughout the universe. Like, a Patriarch doesn't need to infect you. You can actually get infected by a hybrid or someone who's infected by a Patriarch just having sex with you or exchanging fluids, I would assume. Which is an interesting idea. But all it takes is one person on a spaceflight to send a whole world into chaos after a couple decades. The darkest part about all this is that at the end, the old lore was that the Genestealer cults had their mind separated from the hive mind just before they were about to jump into the Tyranid devouring pit, which kind of makes no sense when you have something like this. Being upset and possibly afraid to jump into the acid dissolving pit? Like, they're mutated to shit. Like, their brain should just automatically assume that you don't need hypnosis anymore. I'm pretty sure it was retcon that they are always under the mass delusion and think they are joining God when they jump into the melting pits for spare parts, but I don't know if I can find proper sources for that just yet. The Tyranids see them as nothing more than a processed meal, essentially. The cult, in all honesty, is basically the Tyranid equivalent of fast food anyhow. So, there you go. Genestealer cults, again. And perfect this time, with no issues, and no problems whatsoever. And if I'm wrong, let me know in the comments. I will gladly take this down again, spend hours researching, and re-upload a new video. Speaking of, what do you think about the GSC? I think they are really fun, and I've honestly always wanted to collect them, but I think I have too many armies as is. Let me know in the comments what you think of them. And also, remember to like and subscribe, and special thanks to my channel members for supporting me, and if you want to support me as well as gain access to additional content, then become a channel member today. Thanks again for your patience. I appreciate you all helping me improve this channel, even at the cost of me looking a little silly from time to time. Till next time.